Gain control of cyber risk with Tenable.io, the first vulnerability management platform built for today's elastic assets like cloud, containers, and web apps. Discover a fresh, asset-based approach that prioritizes vulnerabilities while seamlessly integrating into your environment. And improve ROI with the first elastic licensing approach based on assets, not IP addresses. Tenable.io delivers the data and context you need to secure your elastic attack surface. Start your free Tenable.io trial today by visiting Tenable.io. The average time between being hacked and realizing you've been hacked is 1 year. Can you afford to let an intruder roam your network for that long? Can your company weather the fallout when this comes to light? Black Hills Information Security can find the bad guys in your network and train you to do it yourself. Email consulting@blackhillsinfosec.com to find out how a hunt teaming engagement can help you find a persistent threat in your network. IT Pro TV, an easy, entertaining approach to online IT training. Stream over 2,000 hours of up-to-date, high-quality video content live and on demand. For a free 7-day trial and for a limited time, get 50% off a monthly membership for the lifetime of your active subscription. Visit itpro.tv/Security Weekly and use the code SW50. Has your network been breached? Cybereason can help you answer this question. Cybereason products hunt for threats within your network and eliminate them in real time. To Cybereason, real time means within seconds. Founded by former military hackers who don't play by the rules, they've built this experience into their platform. Harness ingenuity and imagination, not just code, to defeat attackers. Cybereason, disrupt the adversary and let the hunt begin. Welcome back, everyone, to Security Weekly. So last night I realized that I had not documented for some of our newer employees the rules and guidelines when you attend a hacker conference. We've talked about this on the show before. There's countless numbers of articles, most of which are very bad, about telling you how to protect yourself when you attend a hacker conference. Some of my newer employees attended their first hacker conference. It's InfoSec World. But as we've had Catherine on the show before, she's bringing in people from the larger security community to come present, therefore exposing my employees to hackers. And I had done a poor job of communicating some of those rules and guidelines to my employees. So I have, last night, very late at night, I created a list of 20 things that you'll see in an upcoming segment here on Security Weekly of 20 things basically not to do and how to protect yourself at conferences. I was just looking at a Facebook post from Dave Shackelford, and Dave's like, some dude left his laptop and phone unattended in the lounge club area in Atlanta airport, and that's really bad. That is on my list to give you a sneak preview. Things you should never do at a hacker conference is leave any of your devices or technology unattended at any time. Very important rule.
Locked or unlocked.
Locked or unlocked does not matter. Do not ever leave your devices unattended. Very bad.
Physical access is key.
Yes. There's a couple of hilarious things and a lot of practical advice. So we'll do that as a technical segment. It might even have to be a 2-part technical segment because there's a lot of things on the list to talk about. So maybe we'll do them 10 at a time. So that'll be fun.
Cool.
Speaking of fun, this week we've got a lot of fun stories to talk about. Larry, did you see the Google Project Zero post about Wi-Fi driver exploitation?
Oh, God. Some light reading there.
That's what I posted on social media. I'm doing some light reading. I was unfortunately not able to really distill it down for the audience really that well, I think, because it was a very lengthy post, extremely detailed, including details on the firmware analysis that rides on the Broadcom chip that is included in both iPhone and Android platforms, both of which are vulnerable because it looks like a bug in the firmware of the drivers, or I don't know if there's a distinction there.
Yeah, and I think that's very much the distinction.
There is a distinction.
The distinction in that the Wi-Fi chipsets in these devices are often now coming with their own embedded MCUs, microcontrollers, and that it becomes an area there that becomes the problem, in that there's very little distinction now between a wireless chipset and some other controller.
Well, yeah, the wireless chipset is essentially like you said, Larry, a microcontroller. It's a computer. It's an operating system in and of itself. I mean, that's what firmware kind of denotes. and the vulnerability was embedded somewhere in there, which, from what I read, affects both, again, iPhones and Android devices. So, and it looks to be a straight buffer overflow. Although the details are linked in the show notes, and it's a healthy read. It's going to take us time to decipher and ingest all of the information in the very detailed post that was put out there.
Yep, exactly. And I think this is also really interesting in that Apple has already pushed a patch for it because it is allegedly that serious. So,
and I saw posts trying to make the distinction between being on the same network and not being on the same network. And from covering wireless driver and chipset vulnerabilities in the past, Larry, you and I both know that a lot of times it doesn't require that you're connected to the same SSID, but that you're just on the same channel, which is a big distinction in this case.
And the other one too, that being on the same network is kind of a moot point at this point, because you just look for the beacons for the various devices, and then you become that network, and then you're on the same network. Whether or not it's a real network or not, that's a different story altogether.
Right. So. Yeah, there's lots of different scenarios. So everyone should go read that, and I think hopefully next week, Larry, we should probably have some more information on that. It's just going to take us time. I didn't see it until today, so.
You were sunning yourself in Orlando.
I was sunning myself in Orlando. And Larry, I really want to get your take on it as well, because you're still instructing the wireless course for SANS, which this will probably be covered in some way, shape, form, or fashion. Like, the next time you teach this class, you're going to get a question from a student about this, so you're going to have to learn it whether you like it or not.
Yep, and that will be starting Sunday that I'm teaching this class. So I better bone up between tomorrow and Saturday. You're
going to get that question. There was an interesting post about some Android ransomware, which it looks like the good news is it looked like it was pretty easy to boot your Android phone up in safe mode and successfully bypass this particular ransomware. But this is a trend that I've seen in malware in general in Android, is the fact that couple things, depending on the attack vector, which they were very, very light on the details in the actual attack vector, more talking about what happens after the infected app gets installed on your phone, is that any Android app can either include another Android app inside of it or be configured on the fly to basically include another Android app and run code, basically run arbitrary code, which seems to me like a gigantic flaw in the underlying architecture of Android, which greatly concerns me because I have an Android phone. And I've been told this, but as someone that was on the show recently said this, I know Bo Bullock has done some presentations about doing compromising Fire Sticks in this way. Basically, you get them to install an app. The app is legitimate, but it includes another app that Bo wrote that is, in fact, a backdoor. So that is concerning to me. So it's a pretty cool read in the show notes as well. I guess we have to talk about the Wi-Fi sex toy with a built-in camera that failed a penetration test.
But what's that got to do with security? The toy doesn't work.
No, it works. It works.
Or are you talking about a different type of penetration test?
Different type of penetration test.
Yes.
This is like the creepiest thing I've read on this subject. Of course, we had Renderman on the show talking about this particular subject. And what you don't necessarily get by reading some of the media press articles is that the camera on this device is on the end that goes inside. That's where the camera is. And the camera is connected to some IoT, for lack of a better term, technology that uses Wi-Fi to create a hotspot that lets you stream the video from it. I don't know.
So interior body cavities.
It is. It's like a
private information, because you can't necessarily. I mean, wouldn't it be rather anonymous?
I don't.
To begin with? I
guess so. I just thought that was very strange. And if you read the technical write-up from, so the quote from the Register is, "Pen test partners these jokes just write themselves, took a look at the device and have a full technical write-up. Essentially, you can use Wiggle. Again, the jokes just keep writing themselves. Wiggle is the site that logs all of the SSIDs. It uses a standard SSID associated with the company that makes this device and see who has this device. And with their exploit that exploits a backdoor, for lack of a better term, yes, and basically streams the video from the camera on this device to your laptop or other device.
So now, you go read the technical review of this story, and then go to the Internet of Dongs and read RenderMan's response to this release.
Oh, so I did not see this. What does RenderMan have to say about this?
So, yes, you go to Wiggle and you search for the default SSID for this particular device with the camera, and there are a total of exactly 2 listed on Wiggle.
Okay.
So,
well, these devices are like $250 according to the pen test partners.
Yep. So there's some other things that he pointed out that very much this industry in which these devices are being used and distributed and marketed, these are folks that have no clue about. They have some clue about privacy, but they have no clue about the potential hacking privacy. And in fact, many times these emails that the folks are sending in to release talk to them about security stuff is getting lost in just a barrage of marketing emails and a bunch of other stuff, because there's likely one person in the company that is responsible for answering all of their generic emails.
Yeah, and the MAC address comes back to, it looks like they bought the hardware from China.
Yep, it's dual-purpose hardware, and in fact...
it's on a drone.
Yep, the hardware is used in drones, and some of the features that they claimed were available may or may not be available because they were commented out and some of those types of things.
I gotcha. Okay.
Some of the other things with the disclosure, the disclosure timeline, when they said they were hearing no responses, yet they decided to go to, quote, release anyways. The Render pointed out some very interesting things in that the times when they chose to do the initial contact were, say, one during the Saturday, like after Christmas, when no one's at work and may not be at work until the first of the year, and then they heard no response. The second time that they chose to do the notification was also during some of the adult industry's largest trade shows.
Yeah.
When in fact the person is probably standing in a booth trying to sell their product,
right,
and not necessarily looking at their emails. And by the time they get back, they've got thousands of emails and this one they're not technical people. They're potentially marketing people, and I don't know what this is, and I'm just going to skip it.
Right.
I've heard that one before.
Yep. So I think some issues with that from pen test partners from that point, but and I think pen test partners may have tried to sensationalize a little bit on this, but then again, who can blame them really? Well,
and then here we are talking about pen test partners, right, for the first time ever.
But think of the fun that we can have with all the double entendres. Like, do they establish a persistent connection, and do they have to reverse tunnel?
Ooh, wow. The imagery, so to speak.
That's all I'm doing.
Yeah, as well. So I thought it was interesting in the. Like, as creative as we are, and as creative as a discussion as we had with RenderMan, now here's another device that's yet even more creative than we thought in putting a, camera inside of these devices. It kind of makes you wonder what's next, and I think really highlights the kind of scariness that is the vulnerabilities in these products and where it could go from here. So, it seems to me like in all of the IoT craze that we have with respects to security, that the sex toy industry is lagging behind more so than any other industry, which is really saying something about how poor security controls are being implemented in this industry. So
right, and in that particular industry, they're not technologists. They have, and this is some of the first foray they've gone into technology. So
there were analog devices up until a certain point, right?
Yeah, and this is a foreign concept to them.
Yeah, well, similar to industrial control systems too, right? I mean, it was completely analog, not connected to anything. I mean, it was basically serial connections before Ethernet. So I think this industry is growing from a similar strategy and culture, and I think it's going to take some time before they come around.
Yep, and I'd argue a lot of the industrial control system stuff is still serial, but have just had a media converter put on it to make it Ethernet now.
Yep. So very interesting. Like I said, just when I thought we were really creative and thinking of what could come next, and here it is. Did I just say that? Okay. So
as long as we're talking about devices, let me interject a brief story. I just put up a video that the makers of the CypherCon badge, which Larry and I have been talking about a little bit, over the top amazing what they did with this badge. For a second year conference, everybody was blown away. And Larry, I promise I will bring it to the studio and leave it so you can play with it. It's basically its own capture the flag built into it, with lots and lots of fun and exciting things to discover.
That's awesome.
The badge is awesome. I mean, these guys spent nearly a year building this from the stories that I heard, and just some of the stuff that they did with it is amazing. The part that really got me is that the part that I find that is fantastic, which is one that I've been trying to see if I could implement, is the text-based adventure via the USB port. And once you complete the text-based adventure, it unlocks something else.
Yep, that part was actually pretty cool. They actually had a lot of activity tables, and one was hacking old arcade games. So they had all sorts of old systems with the old original video games that I used to play back in the day. It was a lot of fun, including Adventure, the original.
Nice.
What is it? You were in a clearing in the woods, or something like that.
Yep.
And speaking of IoT, Larry, did you see the story about? This is right up your alley. Sam's smart TV hack embeds attack code into the broadcast signal. And the way that I understand this is when TVs receive a broadcast signal over that mechanism, that radio frequency or that particular protocol that you get from a TV broadcast station, there's attack code embedded in there that basically compromises the firmware of the device. And then that device can be used as a transmitter, or it spreads over the internet from there. I wasn't sure which. It was very confusing.
I didn't get the second half of that, but it was, the part that was really fascinating to me was the part of the over-the-air type of stuff, in which you can basically create your own TV transmitter with DVB-T. We talked about this RTL SDR thing for a lot. These cheap, inexpensive $20 software-defined radios. That's what these were intended to receive, was digital broadcast terrestrial. And that's effectively what you're sending to the TVs to inject some code. So not only is it potential to send the video, but there's multiple, quote, sub-channels in which other information can be sent. So think about in a modern vehicle, when you have your FM radio in your modern vehicle, you turn on the radio and it tells you what song is playing over the FM station. Mm-hmm. So not only are they sending the audio, there's also a digital format that's, quote, inaudible that is being processed. And I think it's largely around that digital portion, that sub-carrier, as it were.
What they said is that if you could take over a TV station, which immediately made me think of course, the 1995 movie Hackers, where Crash, Override, and Acid Burn are battling on the TV station, right? And they're trying to hack into the TV station. If they only knew that this exploit existed, that would have been awesome.
Yeah, if only they'd had smart TVs back then.
Yeah.
Yes. No smart TVs and no DVB-T. But from my understanding and thinking about some of the projects that I know about, it would be, in fact, very simple to re-implement and not necessarily take over a TV tower, but you could do it with a smaller, low-power transmitter, get closer to your device, and it would be game over. Like you could implement this, practically speaking, from a Raspberry Pi.
Interesting.
With either something like a HackRF or the implementation that toggles the GPIO pin to create RF energy.
Now, what's interesting, there's another story where a researcher, I want to say from Kaspersky's labs, analyzed Samsung's Tizen, which is their firmware, open source, I believe, based firmware. It's like Android. It's built on a Linux kernel. Okay, called it the worst code that he's ever seen, and it is just riddled with ridiculous buffer overflows, widespread due to issues such as the improper use of stir copy, and other such things. Yeah. So,
well, not to defend the developers, but what were they writing to? Does it work? Did they meet their objectives?
Well, yeah, and that's how we end up in the situation of IoT security.
Yep.
Let's see, where do we want to go from here? Do we want to talk about Uber and Lyft? Do you guys use Uber and Lyft?
I do.
Do you use Uber or Lyft or both?
I use Uber.
Okay.
Uber.
Kind of like a side note, not security related. I was catching bits and pieces of the news about Uber, which I wasn't following very closely, about all the troubles they've been having. Apparently, they had the worst March ever. Apparently, there were a lot of sexual harassment allegations at the company. Apparently, there was the whole delete Uber campaign that stemmed from Uber not supporting the strike by taxi drivers due to the Trump's enforcement of border control legislation that was pushed through. There was they hired the Target executive that was supposed to come in and help clean up the image, and that person left after 8 months. So Uber's had a really rough go at it. Also in Massachusetts, it was found that Uber and Lyft drivers, apparently in Massachusetts, you can go back further than 7 years to do a background check, and they did that. And they basically canceled over 8,000 accounts from both Uber and Lyft due to various violations of those persons' record, including 51 sex offenders, which I thought was very scary. We were just talking about Uber because we were traveling recently. So I don't know how that ties to security, but there was a lot of news about Uber and Lyft recently. And I know a lot of us, of course, travel on a regular basis and use Uber to get around. So.
Yep. Now that said, when I use Uber, and I don't know how Lyft works, you can in many locations you can pick the level of service that you want.
Yes.
And so you can pick the Uber X, or you can pick the quote black car.
Mm-hmm.
The Uber X is just some random dude that's got a car that picks you up.
Right.
That has signed up and potentially done a background check. The Uber Select black car type service is very much those that have engaged with various folks to have a lease on a higher class vehicle, Lincoln Town Car, like a Navigator or something of the like. So there's
they're more like a livery
that happens there.
Apparently, the big differentiator between, I got this from the Twit network, I think it was This Week in Tech was talking about it. The big difference between Uber and Lyft is with Lyft, you can put the tip right in the app. With Uber, you can't. And that's been a big usability issue with Uber, and they're kind of cagey about how Uber addresses that issue. But with Lyft, you can put the tip right in there.
Yep, now that's
my
bad, understanding is... Oh, sorry, Jeff, go ahead.
Well, go ahead and finish your thought, because I was going to shift gears a little bit. Still Uber related.
Okay. Yep. Now, my understanding was that Lyft, the prices were lower so that you were able to include said tip based on performance. But the wonderful part about Uber was that it was one transaction, game over. Your tip was included to the driver.
Right.
And they did that by, averaging that out based on the fact that you were a good driver and you got good ratings. So if you give them a good rating, and effectively they get to keep working and they get these decent salary and decent tips on top of it. So it's a little bit more expensive from Uber.
I also heard that, before you go, Jeff, that Uber raised prices but didn't give the drivers any more money. It was more expensive for Uber, but the drivers didn't get that. So there's a lot of stuff happening with this service. Also, Uber had that automated car that got into a crash, which was some bad press for them. I don't know how much FUD there was behind that as well, but there was some other things in the news. So, Jeff, sorry, go ahead.
So I actually heard a news story on Uber. I think it was just today, disturbing in a whole different way. But apparently, in large city centers, it is becoming more and more common for people to call Uber rather than emergency services. So, you're having a medical crisis, medical emergency.
They're going to take an Uber to the hospital.
So they're calling the Uber to get to the hospital.
That is an interesting security scenario, right?
Yep.
That's very, very
well. And they interviewed a couple people that had done it, and one woman I think was pregnant, and so she had gone into labor, and she wanted to get to the hospital fast, so she called an Uber. but somebody else apparently had cut their hand very badly. They were bleeding profusely, and they didn't want to get blood in their car, so they called an Uber, and that driver actually refused them.
As they sat there and bled.
They have a right to do that.
They do.
Yep.
That's interesting.
So not at all security related, but it's fascinating when you come up with new business models.
Yeah.
The nuances that you encounter that you never thought of before.
Well, and it's interesting, Jeff. Along those lines, Garage it. They make automatic garage door openers that are IoT devices. And apparently there was a user that was having a bad experience and it wasn't operating correctly and posted some nasty messages in an Amazon review and posted some nasty messages using expletives as well on the company's website. And the support person at Garage It, or however you say that, actually disabled their account because in the IoT world, as Larry, you and I have talked about, Larry's talked about in his recent presentations, it's all connected to the cloud, right? Like all these devices like have an account in the cloud. Like disabled the dude's account so he couldn't get into his garage. Which I thought was a very interesting use case when we talk about IoT, is if you piss off the vendor. I mean, Larry and I use Arlo, and I did a segment. We'll have to do a follow-up segment on Arlo as well. Yep. When you use Ring and any number of these services, you're logging into their cloud infrastructure. It has an app, but the app is using an API that's in the cloud. They very well could just turn off your account, right? And you don't have access to any of their services and do that at their own discretion, which is, I think, underscores why with security cameras, people always advocate and get really mad if you can't keep your recordings locally. But also is very interesting when we talk about IoT devices. God forbid someone turns off access to your refrigerator or something. So, and this isn't even someone hacking it. This is the company themselves saying, nope, you don't have access anymore.
So what was the upshot? Did the service guy get in trouble? What did the customer end up doing?
The customer ended up seeking Amazon to send the device back and get a refund because essentially the customer said it's not working anymore. So therefore I want a refund. Not a good way to treat your customers. Even if your customer is being a big jerk, not very good press for however you say that name, yep. Garage It.
Customers being a big jerk. And then company being a, quote, petulant child.
Yes. Yes, the exchange is detailed in the article from the BBC that's in the show notes. So I guess the moral of the story is, don't piss off your cloud IoT provider because they'll just turn your access off.
Or don't piss off anybody.
That is a strategy as well. A difficult strategy to live by. I find sometimes.
'Tis true.
What else is going on out there, Jeff, Larry?
So some of the other ones that I saw there, you had some of those very same stories there. I want to say I had another one that was interesting. Let me see if I can pull this up here. Let's see. Some stuff on some additional Samsung TV stuff, and I don't have a lot of detail specifically around some Samsung TVs that was presented at Infiltrate Con today. There's a couple of 0 days a 0 day being released, and along the lines of there is a single device whitelisted that can connect to the TV and has elevated rights, and it's based on MAC address. So,
interesting.
Apparently, all you needed to do is just make your MAC address that MAC address, and you can connect to the TV and access it with significantly fewer restrictions.
Is that is that Samsung?
Mac Daddy.
Is that specific to a manufacturer, Larry, or
Samsung?
Wow, that's like 3 really bad news stories for Samsung this week. Well, I guess the first is not just specific to Samsung with the TV broadcast, but certainly the firmware, and then this other one that Infiltrate. Which is that the one in Miami? Dave Vitale's? That's Dave Vitale's conference.
I think so. Yeah. There's apparently some really interesting stuff coming out of Infiltrate today. But,
awesome.
Some of the other stuff, Schneider Electric, they're one of the large PLC manufacturers providing lots of SCADA and ICS gear. Yet another set of problems with their Modicon line of devices with some hard-coded passwords embedded in their firmware that can't be changed. And you start thinking, I've spent a lot of time reading the Countdown to 0 Day, which was the recount of Stuxnet, and I'm almost done. I've got like 45 minutes left of the book, audio. And then, Jeff, what was the other one that you were in?
Oh, Dark Territory.
Dark Territory. And, this is all the same stuff that we're talking about for these types of attacks, and used all over the place in various ICS systems, including critical infrastructure. So this becomes really scary to me.
I have to chuckle that you're describing how much you have left in the book in terms of minutes rather than pages.
Yeah, well, I can time it. I know exactly how long it's going to take me to read this book, and by read I mean, listen to.
No, it's awesome. It's just it just sounded funny to me because I'm accustomed to saying, "Oh, I got 200 pages left, 100 pages left." Who knows how long it would take me to read it?
Yep. In fact, I've got 30 minutes.
Awesome. Now, does that include the closing credits, or do they do that?
They do, but they're usually pretty short. So, I really don't even count those.
Cool.
Very cool. Well, Jeff,
so
I
got
go ahead, Jeff. One more,
real quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And it's sort of a shifting of gears. The last time I was on the show a couple weeks ago, we talked about the passing of Becky Bass, and I went out to Vegas after that. Came home from Vegas on a Thursday. Was home for about 24 hours. Ron Gula and I were able to fly down. We actually flew to Pensacola, drove over to Mobile, Alabama, which is where they had a memorial service for her. She was working down there at the time for the University of South Alabama. In our travels, we talked about, we really should do something, as far as on the East Coast, because Mobile is a hard place to get to, and a lot of people weren't able to make it. So the other link that I have up on the show notes is an announcement and an invitation we're going to be doing on May 7th, a time of remembrance for Becky, for people in the D.C., Maryland area, primarily ex-NSA people, current NSA people. But it's certainly an open invitation. It's a whole lot easier to get to this area than it is to Mobile, Alabama. So if anybody has an interest in going, I believe it's from 1 to 4 p.m. and it's at a beer place called Jailbreak, which if you're in the area, you're probably familiar with Jailbreak. So I just wanted to throw that out there and let people know about it if anybody is so moved or motivated to come and have a time of remembrance for Becky.
Thank you, Jeff and Larry, for participating in this edition of Paul's Security Weekly. And certainly having a remembrance in a more easy to get to place is a really nice thing to have. So I do encourage people to attend. And certainly there are a lot of people who knew Becky that are in that area, Jeff, as well. So I'm assuming you'll be in attendance to that?
Oh, yes. Yep, I'll be there.
Excellent. Well, thanks, everyone.
Just a real quick one, Paul. I'll be at B-Sides Orlando on Saturday and doing a presentation in a style that I've never done before, which you hate, Prezi. And going through this presentation, I started scaring myself because I'm telling a really great story about two-factor authentication.
Sweet.
And it's
I heard a rumor that John Strand's going to be at B-Sides Orlando. Is that true?
I wouldn't be surprised, given that he is going to be at Sands Orlando the following day. So Bo Bullock at Black Hills is giving a talk there. Let's see. Tim Medine is giving a talk there. John Strand is giving a talk at 2:30 p.m. immediately following me.
Rumor confirmed.
Rumor confirmed.
And then immediately following John Strand is Deviant Ollam.
Wow. So
hey, and next weekend is B-Sides Boston, and I think we're going to have quite a contingent from the show there as well.
We will. Myself, I think Riley, Sam, and Keith, who all work for Security Week, will be there. I believe that's the four of us. We're driving up on Saturday morning. Jack will be there. Jeff, you'll be there. So it'll be good times. Be good times.
Yep.
We're gonna party.
I get pinged to fill in for someone that had to cancel on them last minute, and unfortunately, it's the day I come back from Orlando, if I recall correctly. So I wasn't able to make it.
Oh, we would have had such an awesome time too, Larry.
Yep. Yep.
Change your flight. Come into Boston. Come directly into Boston. I'll pick you. I'll drive into Boston in the morning, Larry, and come pick you up and take you to B-Sides Boston. Well, thanks everyone for listening and watching Paul Security Weekly. We'll see everyone next time. Larry,
over and out.